In this video, I'm going to share how I designed a custom jean jacket for my niece's first birthday. I chose a kid's Levi jacket and decided on the patches that I wanted to create. She was still pretty young, so I chose a few characters she liked, a space theme for the back because her name is Stella, and a few patches to represent her heritage. I also chose the patch sizes and placement on the jacket before getting started. I started by adding the designs, which I printed on water-soluble stabilizer to some heavy-duty felt. I secured the felt in an embroidery hoop, picked out my thread colors, and started stitching. For the first few characters, I mainly used a satin stitch with a back stitch for the outline. I usually like to fill an area with one color and then follow up with the outline after, but you can do it in whatever order you like best. At the time, she was still pretty young and only really liked a couple of cartoon characters, so that's why I only included two, Elmo and Bluey. Next, I moved on to the Puerto Rican flag. Just like with the characters, I mostly used a satin stitch and added an outline and a back stitch. I like to add some anchoring stitches to hold down the design because the stabilizer can sometimes warp as you add stitches. This helps keep the design flat while I work. The stitches I added are part of the design, but you can also add a loose running stitch around the outside of the design and remove the thread once you're finished. Next, I moved on to the shooting star. My niece's name is Stella, so I thought a space theme would be cute for the back of the jacket. I went mostly with the chain stitch and metallic gold thread for this part. It was honestly a massive pain to work with because most metallic thread can be pretty finicky, but I love the overall look. Then I moved on to the planet. I added a few swirls with a heat erasable marker and was planning to use them as a guide for my stitches, but I didn't really end up going with that kind of design in the end. I wasn't trying to make it look like any particular planet. I mostly wanted it to look really colorful and swirly, so I switched between the colors I picked out whenever I thought was best. For the rings, I used the metallic gold thread again and a technique called couching, where I use a different strand of thread, some yellow thread in this case, to anchor the metallic thread in place. For me, it was just a lot easier than trying to do another stitch. Next, I moved on to the patch of her name. I was going for a flower lettering, so I started by drawing circles where I knew I wanted to put down roses and daisies. I also added some crosses to the roses to help me place down the stitches relatively evenly. This type of rose has a few names, I'm sure, but I mostly know it as a wheel rose. You place down 5 evenly spaced stitches that all meet in the center, and then weave your thread over and under those stitches in a circle until you run out of space. The end result looks a lot like a rose. I also like to add some small French knots to the middle of each rose, usually in yellow. I added in a few daisies using the Lazy Daisy stitch, but forgot to film it unfortunately. Lastly, I go in and fill the rest of the letters with French knots. I like to add a few in the color of the flowers and then the rest in the color of leaves. I usually pick 2 to 3 shades of green for the leaves, so there's some variation. And this is how it turned out. It takes time, but it always looks really good. At this point, I ran out of space on my felt, so I added a layer of Mod Podge to the back to help secure the stitches. This isn't necessary, but it can add a bit of protection to the back of your patch. Next, I moved on to the Black Lives Matter fist. I did this completely with satin stitches and chose a color scheme that matched with a few of the other patches. I think it came out really cute. I then moved on to the Filipino flag. I used satin stitches for the larger areas as well as the sun design in the center of the white triangle, and finished it off with a backstitch outline. I used metallic gold thread again for the constellation of her zodiac sign and went with the couching method again since this thread is difficult to work with. Lastly, I did the earth patch. This is definitely not an accurate globe, but I mostly wanted to give the impression that it was the Earth. I did green and a beigeish color for the continents, and a few shades of blue for the water. These are the finished patches. I think they turned out so cute. I went through and cut out each patch, leaving an even outline of white felt for the border. You want to be careful not to cut too close to the edge so you don't end up cutting into the design. At this point, you can add an edge to the patch with a whip stitch, but I just kept them all white and used a basic running stitch with white thread to put them on the jean jacket. This is the final product. I really love how it turned out and she looked absolutely adorable in it. If you love to hand embroider, I highly recommend this as a gift idea, especially for a kid. Overall, I think it only took about 15 to 20 hours to do all these patches because the jacket was so small. I also went a couple of sizes up so she would be able to wear it for a few years. You also could get away with doing less patches, especially if you pick an overall theme, and it'll still look amazing. Thank you for watching.